Welcome to Threads of Sustainability, where we dive into the stories behind sustainable quilting and textile arts. I'm your host, Bridget O'Flaherty, guiding you through the vibrant world of eco-conscious creators, innovators, producers, and industry players. Join us as we explore the intersection of textile creativity and sustainability, a narrative that threads together the past, present, and future of mindful textile practices. Welcome to another episode. And I'm really excited to have you here this week to talk with or to listen to the conversation with Maddie Kertay that I have. I really thought it was important to have this conversation because Maddie is kind of delving into a world around inclusion and diversity and accessibility in the quilt world. And she's doing it in a very open and very somewhat confrontatory way, which is, sometimes we need these things and we need these people in our lives. So I think it's really exciting what she's doing. And it was, I think, an important conversation that needs to be had to understand what the different options are and what our different possibilities are as we move forward in our world towards what sustainable futures can actually be. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this conversation. I want to welcome my next guest to the podcast today, and this is Maddie Kertay and she is the BadAss Quilter. And I am so excited because I ran into you on Instagram and started watching what you're doing and the conversations that you're having with people, these really honest conversations. And I think that that's awesome. And you have a bit of a community around you now. You've built a community. And this, to me, is a very exciting part of sustainability. And I wanted to talk to you about that. And you do other things around sustainability and the work that you're doing. But the community part is such a big part of that. So anyway, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
You. Yeah. It's been a long road. I mean, I first took on the moniker of the BadAss Quilter over 10 years ago and had a first shot at this. And then a little bit pre-COVID, basically chucked it all. I said, I lit a match to 30,000 members and walked away for a while. Yeah. And in between that, I also had a quilt shop. And then I had a child who got very sick. And so I closed my quilt shop because there's only so much time in life and there's some things you don't get back.
Yep.
Quilt shops come and go. And so, but community to me is the heart of what I do as somebody who gathers together liberal, progressive quilters, to feel safe and to build a more welcoming quilt universe out there. Because, a lot of people would say that, we're really welcoming, but a lot of people would tell you, no, it has its own very gatekeeping, very stay away from me attitude that is not especially welcoming for a lot of people. And I really want to change that.
Yeah. Well, and I think the quilt industry has had this. It's a bit elitist, I would say, in some ways.
Oh gosh, where to speak, not to get myself burned to the ground again, which is actually not a big deal because I really don't. When I came back, I really decided that I was not going to tie or even pursue, sponsorships and different stuff like that, because then that was really difficult because that really ties you to saying the things that they want you to say or not saying the things that you don't want them to say,
Right.
And because they're like, your money is tied to this. And I just decided I couldn't do that anymore. And I didn't do a lot of it before, but when I first came into the world of long arming, I worked for a brand and did some stuff. And then they did not like things that they found on my website. Oh. And they were like, if you want to continue working with us, you're going to have to scrub your website of all these things. And I was like, well, you been a little more careful and looked at those things before you said yes to me. Yeah. Quilting in itself, it can cost us a certain amount of money. It does not have to be super expensive, but it can become wildly expensive.
Yeah.
It's like playing golf. It's like any other hobby. You can be a very, very budget-minded person, or you can spend the moon and the stars.
Yeah, it can be very expensive.
The time, it is a hobby. Yes, just having the time or the space to do it I am very lucky. I mean, I've got a studio, I've got space. I have quilted and sewn in every space. When I was a young mother, my quilting and sewing space was literally a linen closet.
Oh, wow.
That I claimed as my own, because I really wanted a space of my own. I had 3 young children at the time. I'm the mother of 6.
Wow.
But I had 3 young ones at the time, and I just needed space for myself. I needed that little thing that was mine. And we had a house that was full of 3 children, a very small house. And so I literally cleaned out a linen closet, like one of those skinny little hall closets that's not super deep. And I cleaned it out, and I built a shelf in it, and I put my little used sewing machine on it. And I ran an electrical cord from the plug around the corner up into it. And I made my own space because that was so important for my mental health to have this thing.
Sure.
At the time, I was not a quilter. I was sewing for my children,
right,
which I really, really enjoyed. I sewed for my children. I sewed for my home. And then I started repairing things for people. I started doing mending to make an extra income, because most people don't know how to mend.
right.
And so that really helped sustain us financially through a lot of really hard times. That it sustained me while I was a divorced mom of 3.
Okay.
Because you can hem a lot of jeans and make some money. I mean, and that's kind of what I did. And so I know what it is to have a small space and to grab your own tiny little piece of this world. But I want to have a place for everybody to find their place in this quilt world. If this is where they want to be, if they don't want to be here, that's awesome too. I mean, because there are people who don't like quilts. That one article I wrote, people get so angry that says, don't give quilts as gifts.
Tell me about that article.
Not everybody likes quilts. I mean, or, I don't even want to use the word respect them, but I mean, if you're emotionally tied, and that was really the basis of that conversation, is if you cannot emotionally let go of the quilt you're giving somebody for them to put it on their sofa and let their dog have its puppies on it or whatever, then you shouldn't give a quilt. You should give them a gift card.
Right.
Because if you're that emotionally wrapped up in it, that's not a healthy transaction. That's not.
Then you're putting your expectations of how it's supposed to be used onto that other person. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about how you got into quilting and why you decided to start talking to people in a way. Like, how did you get to being a public person doing quilting instead of a person who's just doing quilting as a hobby?
I don't want to say I've always been a public person, because I'm an incredible introvert, is the funny part, because nobody would peg me as an introvert, but I have to give up my energy for everything I do. As far as quilting goes, I really never considered that I was going to be a quilter. And it all ties back to the fact that 23 years ago, our son died. One of our sons died. And I had been a voracious sewer. That word is always such a weird word. Sewist sounds elitist too. I don't know. A person who sews. And I sewed all the baby clothes. I sewed all their kids' clothes, stuff like that. But when he died, the last thing I had made before he was born, and he died 48 hours after he was born. He was full-term baby. I had a placental abruption, and he was oxygen deprived.
Okay.
And so he was born, he was brain dead. And we made the very painful decision to take away life support. And we did that. But I came home after that, and I couldn't touch my sewing machine. I couldn't touch it for years and years and years. And I short of like fixing something that the kids needed fixed, I literally put it all away. I did become a voracious knitter during that, because I'm always doing something.
Sure.
But I knit like a woman possessed. And I probably kind of was possessed. And during that time, I also got pregnant again very quickly and had my youngest child. 7 to 8 years later, I thought, you know what? I want to get my machine out. And I got my sewing machine out, and I was like, you know what? I think I want a new sewing machine. And my husband was like, okay, go get a new sewing machine. And so I went and I bought a Bernina 830.
Nice.
Which is a very large, incredibly expensive machine. I mean, like anybody who knows, they're like $12,000. They're
Okay.
very, very expensive.
Okay.
And, but I had money that had been left to me when my father died during that whole thing. My father had also died. I'd been left some money. And so I decided I wanted this really great machine. I got this really great machine and I decided I was going to make a quilt. I made a quilt. I made it all. And then I quilted it on that machine. And I thought, man, this sucks. I was quilting a king size, oversized king size quilt on a domestic machine, even though it was a very large domestic machine. And it was my first quilt ever. So there's lots of stuff I didn't know.
Sure.
But I thought, well, those long arm things look great. I went and bought a long arm.
Okay. You just jumped in.
I did. I jumped in 2 feet. It wasn't too, you've never seen a more ecstatically excited machine dealer than when I walked back in like 5 weeks later after buying the 830 and bought a long arm.
Right. Of course.
But so I bought a long arm and I jumped right into that. And everything I saw out there in the quilt world, was, very experienced quilters, people, and it was very closed off. I mean, this is now 11 years ago.
Okay.
So we actually had the internet, but, everything was, also honestly very religiously centered in a very conservative way.
Sure.
And
well, you're down in Tennessee, right?
I am in Tennessee, but the internet makes you kind of wide open.
Sure.
But many of the groups, there were like many like kind of statement of faith quilt groups out there.
Okay.
And I was like, that was something that I could not a good conscious sign. And let alone since I am queer, I mean, there was just lots of, homophobic behavior and talking and, it was really unfortunate. And so during that whole time, I had won a chance with the Handy Quilter Company. Everybody knows who they are by now. Anybody who's figured it out, because I was on the side of their building. I was on the side of their van and everything like that. But they didn't like some of the things I said.
Okay.
And they were like, you can't go on being one of our sponsors.
Wow.
And and that was okay. That was their choice. They are, while not a religious company, they are the people who owned it at the time were, that was their religious conviction and that was their choice. I have to support that choice if I'm going to ask people to support my choices.
Sure.
So it was like, but in the end, I was just too controversial.
Okay.
I wasn't willing to walk the line.
So for those of us who aren't familiar with BadAss Quilters and Maddie Kertay, how were you controversial? What is it you were doing? How is that?
Oh my gosh. I would talk about reproductive rights.
Okay.
I would talk about being more welcoming to gay and trans people, to their groups. Yeah. Asking people, to have a statement on their mission that said, that we are open, we are accepting, we welcome everybody. And that was not a popular sentiment. It's still not a popular sentiment.
I would agree with that.
There are amazing quilt groups out there who have taken and done the very hard work of writing their bylaws and making their groups welcoming and being very clear about who they are. And there are many groups that have blown themselves to hell and high water because a couple of people in the group would be like, hey, we need to do this. And the rest of the group was like, no, we will not. And so I get to talk to a lot of those groups. But after basically losing the ability to work with Handy Quilter, and I'm like, everybody knows who it is. And I've actually never said it out loud because that's really who it is. But in a couple other companies, I mean, it's happened again and again that they're like, you're just too controversial for us to work with.
Oh, wow.
We will. Yeah. I mean, and the funny part is that there are fabric companies who have owners who are gay. Mm-hmm. And who are lesbian, who are whatever, but they're like, yeah, no, we stay so far away from that because our conservative base would shun us, right? And we would lose too much business, right? So I get it, I do get that, but I also think that there's another way to go about it. So back when all that happened, I wrote a post that I think that we should be a badass quilter, and you should stand up for what you believe in, and that the people who are hiding within these groups who are like, I just want to be with other quilters. So I'm not telling anybody that I'm gay. I'm not like, when people say things, I'm not, mentioning that I have a gay child or whatever, so that I can actually be with these quilting people. And I'm like, you shouldn't have to give up part of yourself.
Yeah. No, you shouldn't
to be with other people who share this, because there are tons of other people out there who are progressive, and who are quilting and who are sewing and who are, I think it's come to light, especially lately, like the embroidery world, they are like incredibly progressive. Like lots of hand embroidery, lots of stuff like that. The knitting world has a really strong progressive movement in it. The quilt world, not so much.
I find there's pockets, there's pockets of the progressive folks and groups, so you can find them.
Sure.
And because of the internet now, it makes it easier to be a more global thing. When I started quilting 30 years ago, that was not a thing. It was not a thing. It was very, you had your local quilt guild, and you maybe had a national group that you could go to and see, but it was very, very conservative. And it was generally an older demographic in their 60s and 70s. I was by far the youngest quilter in the region. And that was the novelty, was that I was young. It had nothing to do with anything else, really. It was that I was young. I think that that's very typical still of the quilt community generally. I agree with you. It's really is not, it's not openly progressive. But there's pockets.
There are pockets. And, and if a quilt group is going to be conservative, I want them just to put it on their thing. I want them to say, because I don't want people to go and feel ashamed. I don't want them to go and feel out or whatever. So, fly your flag. If you want to fly your Trump flag at your thing, please do, because then I know I don't want to be there.
Sure.
And in the same way, I want quilt groups to say in their mission statements, I want them to say, I want them to have the balls to say that they are progressive, that they hold these values to be true. And so I just basically doubled down in it. I had grown to, previously when I had the kind of the first incarnation of BadAss Quilter Society, we grew on Facebook, because that's where you grew at the time.
Right.
There really wasn't, Instagram wasn't big or whatever. And so I grew to a platform of about 30,000 over there.
Okay.
And there was like 34,000, something like that, when I just pushed the button and made them all go away.
Right.
I said, goodbye. I'm not doing this anymore. But there were so many people, I had not been clear enough about who I was and how I intended to run that group. And then I thought, okay. And so in the middle of that, we bought a new old house that I was working on, and we were doing lots of other stuff. And I was really hoping somebody else would take up the mantle,
right,
of really being out there. And there are pockets, there are groups. But even then, they'll shy away from topics because it's like getting roasted over a campfire spit.
Sure.
Because I am unapologetically liberal, and I am unapologetically supportive of of human reproductive rights. Yeah. And I'm just not going to shy away from those things just because I'm supposed to be something else. And if I'm a quilter.
Yeah, I think it comes back. Like, I have had this pushback with some of the stuff that I do, talking about sustainability specifically. I get this pushback. This is not a political stance. It's just being a human. So
anyway. It is. And it's very difficult because, I think there are ways to bring people through sustainability. So it's kind of interesting because I've had friends because I have a lot of friends who own quilt shops. I used to own a quilt shop. I owned a quilt shop called Spool, and we owned it for 4 years. And its second year, a year and a half out, it was in the Better Homes and Gardens magazine. It was one of the shops picked. There was, it was beautiful. It was wonderful. And then I had a child who was very ill, and I was like, can't do, won't do, goodbye. And I closed it up to take care of them. So obviously I was in the world of new fabric. I was in the world of those things. And I have a lot of friends who have quilt shops, and I want to see them succeed in business. That is at odds with how I now have inched my way into thinking more sustainably.
Yeah.
and working with more upcycled fabrics. In fact, it started by taking a pledge. This would have been my second year. So 2 years ago, not to buy any new clothing, to only buy used clothing.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And I love thrifting. So, but even thrifting, you can be wasteful because I mean, there's so much of cool stuff out there. Yep. It's easy to have too much stuff when you thrift too.
Totally.
And there's a balance because I mean, the truth of the matter is that I sell T-shirts. I sell T-shirts that help people find each other.
Yeah. Because
short of wearing a sandwich board and walking up and down the street going, hey, I'm a liberal quilter. Are you a liberal quilter too? There's not other ways to connect with people and find each other.
Yeah.
So everything is a balance in my life. And so when I started not buying as much, or my life is not perfect. And there are still times that I buy new fabric. And I also do work with new fabric that friends of mine who are designers, and they send it to me. And so, I'm trying my very best as a human, like you said, and I don't think of it as political, but if people want to think of it as political, okay, this is my politics. Sure. My politics is as this liberal person who wants free and open space to support folks coming into quilting, no matter how they come into it.
Yeah.
That way, because it can be really expensive. It doesn't have to be.
No.
But
so that's your driver around there's lots of different lenses that we can look at sustainability, right? There's lots of different ways that we can approach to be sustainable. Like you say, there's all these different things, decisions you have to constantly make. I feel like I am every day making decisions about, is this the path that I want to take on the sustainable journey? Like, is this the right direction I want to go? Or do I need to just park that sustainable piece and just do this because I need to do this? Like I have to buy new microphones. I drive a car. I have computers in front of me. Like I have plastic things. I have things that were made in countries where the labor laws are not awesome. I purchase those things because sometimes I need to facilitate what it is that I'm doing. And I can only do so much. And I think that that's a super important part of the journey of deciding to be sustainable, is to give yourself a break, because you can't do everything. You can't do all of it. Otherwise, you would be maybe living in an existence that isn't healthy for you.
Absolutely. You pick the hill you want to die on.
Exactly.
I mean, is what my dad would say. When I was being a shit as a kid, he was like, is this the hill you want to die on? Is this what you're going to take? And I'd be like, I mean, when I had babies, I cloth diapered all my babies.
Yep.
I mean, that was a thing. I started because I was poor, because I really could not afford to have disposable diapers. Yep. So I actually even made my own diapers because I could sew. Yeah. So I really, I loved during the pandemic, and I've kept it up, is like, that sewing is my dystopian life skill.
Yes.
I can.
Yes.
And so there's so much I can do with that. And there's so much I can fix with that and do. One of the things that I have taken up doing in the past couple of years is that I ask people if they have winter coats that have like broken zippers and stuff like that, that they're not wearing anymore. And I repair those, and then I use them. I get them to the homeless or to the unhoused population. Nice. Because there are so many even that show up, because like if it has an obviously broken zipper and you give it to the thrift shop, they throw it away.
Right. So,
I mean, one of the ways that I am sustainable is by fixing things, because being able to fix something is a superpower.
Yeah. The whole thrift shop situation, people are always like, well, I'll just give it to the thrift shop and then it gets reused there. Well, only 30% of what we donate actually makes it to the floor. The rest of it gets shipped out. And sometimes it gets sorted. Yeah, sometimes it gets sorted and moved into be other fibers. Like it'll go to recycling centers for shoddy fabric, and that'll happen. But a lot of the time, like 70% of that, those donations often end up in other countries.
Oh, yeah, they are a trash can. And like I said, I really try to maintain a balance, because I mean, I love seeing all those beautiful fabrics. Sure. I love seeing my friends who are designers.
Yeah.
doing that. But I really try to think, because I'm not saying I don't buy new fabric sometimes or I get it from them, but I really try to think, which one of these am I really going to use? If there's, especially when you have a collection that has 30 fabrics in it,
Yeah.
Which one of these are you like heart loving every one of them? No. I mean, so I'm going to get the two that, a small cut of the two of them that I love. So I know I have the best chance of actually using those.
I think that that's one of the most important things that I'm starting to practice now is what I'm calling mindful stitching. So when I'm doing anything, any projects that I'm doing, any fabrics that I'm purchasing, any materials that I'm purchasing, I have to have a reason for getting them. I don't want to just get them because, and it can be because I love them, because, oh my God, I want to use that someday. I love this fabric, but I try to find something a little deeper than that. And maybe it's because I want to support my friend who is getting into the business designing. And that's part of sustainability, is supporting these small businesses that are starting to make a business for themselves and supporting a whole bunch of other people by having that business. So it's not just about the material content in sustainability. There's lots of other layers of sustainability.
Oh, it's very nuanced.
That we got to think about. That we can think about,
It is. And it's doing the little things. And I think the little things really show up actually more in the rest of my life. It shows up in, like, I finally ditched having Ziploc bags. Yep. I mean, and I would call myself, I'd been the Ziploc bag queen for a long time. I used them to sort things. I used them for whatever. And finally I got to the point where I also had the emotional bandwidth all of a sudden to do that one small thing. Because sometimes you just don't have the emotional bandwidth or the time or whatever to do those things. And so trying to take them on is just going to make you feel like a failure.
Yeah.
And figure it out as, you're jumping off the cliff and, you're figuring it out then. But I'm going to probably always continue to, have an older car. Right. I'm always going to continue, and do the things that I need to do in that balance. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of part of it, but I'm never going to shame somebody because we're all at different points in our journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because somebody's just going to shut down. I mean, anybody who's ever shamed you about anything has never made you a better person.
Right.
Or made you want to go, wow, that shaming really changed my life.
So there's a balance though with that, like with the idea of shaming, because I do a lot of talks around sustainability and I feel like I'm dancing on a delicate line because I may not be intending to shame somebody, but it doesn't matter what my intention is. It's where the other person is at, right? And they come with their own lens and their own space, and they may find what I'm saying makes them feel ashamed. And I find it really hard. I don't know how you feel when you're doing your talking, to give people the information that they might want to have about what is going on in the world when we choose to not move in a sustainable direction, and give them opportunities to maybe make small changes in their life. Not that they have to, but that they could, and that's the approach that I try to take. It doesn't matter what I try to do. It's how other people perceive, so how do you balance that?
A lot of times I really like to start a conversation with the fact that this is going to bring up a lot of feelings. I mean, and sometimes we don't even know that there's going to be feelings associated with something.
Yeah.
Even just in the motherhood world, so flipping competitive. They should be giving out Olympic medals at this point because they're, especially on the internet. I tell my oldest daughter, I'm so glad, my daughter-in-law, that I'm so glad I am not raising babies right now in this culture, because I mean, I made choices for myself that might not have been necessarily popular. I cloth diapered my babies. I breastfed them for a very, very long time. But even when if I mention it, sometimes that brings up stuff in people. They're like, well, I couldn't breastfeed, or I was too busy and I had, I'm like, awesome. My journey is my journey. And so when I'm like specifically sitting down to talk about something, I usually try to parse that with, it brings up feelings.
Sure. Sure.
And we don't necessarily know that we're going to have those feelings. And a little bit like, what's this phrase that like the Girl Scouts use, take what you need and leave the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way of thinking about it.
Because something might not be right for you right now. It might never be right for you, or it might ease its way into your life.
This is a great time for me to jump in here and extend an invitation to you folks. For those of you who might have promised yourselves to do a stash review this year, I know I'm one of those people. I'm inviting you to come and join me on a 30-day stash review challenge, where we get a chance to take a look at our materials and assess what the value is of them. Are they precious? Are they functional? Are they things that we maybe don't need in our lives anymore? And how can we sustainably move them from our stash to somebody else's so they have a circular process to them? We're going to take a look at all of that and take a look at how we can actually do those kinds of things and learn some of the stories behind some of the materials that we have in our stashes and share that stuff with each other in the Green Stitchers Hive. If you haven't joined the Green Stitchers Hive already, you can head over to my website at bridgetoflaherty.com and learn more about the 30-day challenge and the Green Stitchers Hive. Let's jump back into this conversation with Maddie, and we are actually talking about her stash and what she's doing around her stash and around materials in her own quilt world. So let's have a listen to the rest of this conversation with Maddie. I hope you're enjoying it so far.
It's not extensive because I would say that I have friends who have really extensive vintage fabric collections, and I've like limited myself. You wouldn't know it by looking at my studio right now, but I have like my rule is if it has to fit in this cabinet, and if it doesn't, I either have to parse that out and sell it off or give it to somebody else who really loves it or whatever, or I can't buy more of it. Right. Because I've like hit my mother load. This is my mother load, amount. Which helps me keep in a little bit of control because I love seeing this stuff. Yeah. I love finding it.
Yeah.
And so, that makes a difference. But those feelings of, like somebody's like, well, my life is really busy. I said, I had a really busy zone in my life too. There were years where like for a whole year, our life was such a shit show that we used paper plates every night. Yeah. You know what? I know that life, and my life is at a place right now where I can use vintage stoneware and I feel really good about it and I really love it. But I still remember that time when that was the best I could do. And I was just lucky to be getting dinner on the table.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we also have to do is just be a little bit kind to ourselves, that sometimes this is the best you can do. And that's okay. That's enough. Doesn't have to be any more than that. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that approaching whatever we're doing, but when we come to the quilt world with that kindness and forgiveness to ourselves, that today maybe isn't our best day. That's okay. Or today was a great day. I slayed it. Awesome. It doesn't matter which day it is. It's just approaching all of it with kindness.
But there's something I will leave because there are touch points for a conversation.
Sure.
And a lot of those are the people who say, I didn't come here for politics. I'm like, well, first place, you didn't have to come here.
Right.
First place. You made the choice to click over and make this comment. Right. You made the choice to continue reading through that post. Yeah. And I think from that point, it's important to show, because I think we end up getting a little bit insular, whatever world we make, because if all my friends are liberal, if all of the people I want to spend time with, and that's really the truth of the matter is I'm not going to go to a quilt guild who has people who, and because I have been to these meetings before where somebody says that my child is an abomination. I'm like, nope, not doing that. My life is too short for that. I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to be that. Or even if they don't happen to know, because my youngest child is trans, and even if they don't happen to know my child is, I'm not going to put up with somebody saying those kind of things. Yeah. And that's a little weird because I continue to live in the South. Everybody's like, why do you stay in the South? I said, well, because if every one of us left, what would there be left?
Right.
And so I do stay. I do represent, city council meetings. I do those things. because I think that those of us who have a voice right now and who do feel strong enough, because you can really feel strongly that, that everybody should have LGBT rights and, all those things, but maybe you don't have the inner strength right now to say that out loud.
Yeah.
Some of us have to be here and strong enough right now, because there might be a day where I'm not strong enough.
Sure.
Somebody might find my Achilles heel and I will have to go and nurse my wounds someplace for a while.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that did happen for a little bit, but
it did. It did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah. And then you're back with a new perspective.
I am back with a new perspective of, that I had to not care anymore about, and not tie myself to that money in order to make a living. Cause that's the other side of it, is that, I can't be here and do this for no money.
No, of course.
There's
that's not sustainable.
I have to have a living. No, that's not sustainable either. So I have to make a living.
Yeah.
Or, I need to go take a job where it didn't come home with me. I need to go make widgets on a line or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because there has to be a certain amount of sustainability.
So you're bringing together all kinds of different things that are important to you, right?
It is. I've woven them together. Now, when I worked with like an online, guru person, they're like, you need to like button down, and I have to a certain point, but I'm like, this is my life. I've woven these things together so that they support each other.
Yeah.
And that works for me. Would it work for everybody? No. And could I grow faster maybe if I even more like tightly solidified my message? Maybe. But, then I would not be being very true to myself.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's an important step. I think the more honest we are with ourselves about how we want to approach our worlds, and if we're being public people, that truth comes out for other people. And that's what attracts people to you, right? Is that authenticity, right? The authenticity of that. So talk to me a little bit more about some of the stuff that you are doing now that is feeding what you're doing. Like, do you do workshops? Do you do guest speaking? Do you have your online presence, but what is your community doing? What are you offering in your community?
Gosh. Okay. So I do have a Patreon community, and I just started it because we were looking for a place for everybody to gather.
Sure.
And at the time, it also was a place because we have lots of like very saucy, badass themed stickers. And so basically I wanted to be able to send them each a sticker every month. It was the best way. It was the best place to do it at the time. That was relatively easy to do. And so we have a Patreon, which is growing pretty quickly. It's got a free side. It's got a private side. It's really about being there and being together and knowing, just like going to your guild meeting where, everybody understands you and you guys are kind of on the same page. So you can say things and that you're safe, that you're understood. That's what that is. And that works. And that works really well. And I really love having it over there. And we do that. And then we do a certain amount of projects, but that's like fully community, even like the wider, like, Instagram community. Like I've started a project that's called the What She Fears Project.
Okay.
And we just went through getting all of the blocks. So it was basically based on a quote, who's going to keep you safe if we're not around? And then the woman replies, well, then we would be safe if you weren't around.
Right.
And so because I spend a lot of time talking about, women's physical safety and how as women, we live this very different life that men don't really understand that, if we have to walk through a dark parking lot, we thread our keys through our fingernail or through our fingers. We spend more time listening. We listen very carefully if there's somebody behind us.
Yeah.
There are things we do. And so that really made me think about this and how many women have been hurt. All those like little things that, most women have had happen to them through the course of their lives.
Yep.
And so I started writing about it and talking about it and came up with this quilt project that was called the What She Fears Project. So I said, basically sign your name to a fabric block And if you want to tell me your story, put your story on a piece of paper with it. And so I said, then send them to me because I'm going to do an art project with these starting at the first of the year. And so they did. They sent them in. But the letters with them. So hard. And I want to do justice to these things. And so I've gotten hundreds of these names, and the way I'm going to be putting them together is very specific. And I'm also incorporating all these fabrics that I've collected, or these like old pieces of embroidery, but I'm going to be combining those into an art piece, an art quilt for a Women's Month in 2024.
Amazing.
And so all these people through BadAss have sent these pieces, and I'm still getting them in. So we've done, like bigger projects like that. We've got people who are like getting together. So within the Patreon community, somebody's like, well, I live in, wherever, anybody else around here, or I'm going to be going to this quilt show. Who's going to be going there?
So you're connecting people.
Yeah. We're connecting people. Mostly they connect by either wearing, like, if they want to be more subtle, we have a little pin that they can wear, but most of them choose to wear one of the t-shirts.
Right.
And that's been so gratifying. And obviously t-shirts, I know it, knowing about sustainability, I know how many t-shirts end up at thrift shops and piles and things like that. But I'm hoping that they serve a greater good in connecting people together, because if you go out in public and you have on a BadAss Quilter t-shirt, and this is only one of like 30 shirts that we have, that person in some way, you're going to have a connection with them. And I get so excited, especially when it's kind of like quilt show season, the amount of people who like send me pictures where they find each other when they're like traveling someplace. Like even we've had people who've gone to Australia and somebody went, I'm a BadAss quilter too, and found them.
Yeah. Finding your people is always so, I don't know, it's just, you suddenly feel home.
So that's where community, that's where it really comes down to. I mean, anything that I make and sell is really, yes, it supports me, but for me, the bigger thing is helping people find each other in this very, very crowded world, and to have a voice.
And that part of sustainability is really, really important, right? Like we need to have community efforts in what we are doing. We need to have community connections in what we are doing, because we're humans and we need to be able to feel safe wherever we are. And we need to be able to express ourselves. It's giving us that space to explore our artistic and creative endeavors in textiles in a safe space. Like it's so important to have that, I think. And you're giving that opportunity. That's a wonderful thing that you're doing.
That's really the core of it is finding, because that's really what I always want. And everything's been about community in my life. A lot of times we don't live in those tight-knit family communities anymore, just because of the way life works anymore. And so we really have to build our own communities. It's a DIY effort.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be really intimidating. I mean, because what I tell people, they contact me, they're like, I'm like the only liberal quilter in my area. I said, I know you're not. I know that there is somebody else hiding in their sewing room. I said, so if you're able to be, for lack of a better word, loud enough so people can find you.
Yeah.
If you have the inner ability to make yourself into a lighthouse so that people can find you one way or another, your people will come to you. They will find you.
It's so, so important. Yeah. And I think that, historically textiles, like, and certainly quilting in North America was always a community, right? Like the community came together and did the quilting and they were able to have those. And it wasn't just about quilting. It was about the community piece and supporting each other through good times and bad times and hard times and wonderful times. That quilting community would rally around in those different efforts and support each other. And so the quilting community is still doing that in different ways. And now we're getting the opportunity to reach the people who were excluded before, because there has been exclusion over time. There absolutely has. And anybody who thinks there hasn't is just in denial because there has been
Well, they live in their own bubble. Representation for me, I talk about how representation is really important. And I shout it out to the quilt world a lot. It's like, if there are only white hands in your ads unrolling the fabric, if there are only, young white women in your advertising, if there are only those things, then that is what your company is associated with. You need to make very deliberate choices to show faces and hands and people and circumstances so that you can open up that world more. For sure. And not in just a, because of course, everybody in June is flying their pride flag. I want to know who's flying their pride flag in October and November, and December.
Is so good to start seeing that in a consistent way in the quilt world. And it's I am seeing it in a consistent way. And maybe it's because I'm looking for it. I don't know, but I'm seeing it in a more consistent way. And I appreciate that those efforts are being made.
I do too. And I'm going to patronize those places.
Yep.
Those are the companies I am more likely, if I am going to choose to buy a new fabric, if I am going to choose a new sewing machine, I am going to pay attention to those things. And some of them are small.
Yeah.
And making sure that the language you use, because how many people say, when they start a quilt podcast, they say, "Ladies, I'm here." Well, is it just ladies?
Right. No. Yeah.
It's not. And so it's really having to think back about that language barrier and how we're talking about people and stuff like that, so that we are making this more inclusive. And so I do notice. And then when companies consistently don't do it, I might poke at them. Yeah. I might poke at them a little, because I've got a forum where I can poke at them, and a platform. Either they double down and say, "No, this is how we've always done it, and we're going to do it this way till hell freezes over." Right. Or they're like, somebody notices that we're not doing this. Yeah. Because sometimes it's just your laziness.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we are getting better at allowing people to express themselves and finding their new people. They might lose business, but they also might gain business that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
They might, but they're too scared because, quite frankly, fear is enough that it keeps them from it. Even in companies that have lots of progressive employees, have lots of progressive owners, but they are so fearful that she's going to snap her pocketbook closed and not give them her money.
Right.
The quilt world runs on such a small margin. The profits are they are not amazing. And so, especially when you do have a larger brand, and so you've got lots of people working for you, so you feel responsible for their paychecks. Yeah. But I think a little bit like sustainability, there are ways for those companies to start sneaking little things in. Yeah. A little bit at a time.
I agree.
Changing their language a little bit, making sure their language is more inclusive, one step at a time. And I think that's how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I have this quote that I love throwing out there. It's that they, I can't remember the exact quote right now, but it's basically casting a stone to create ripples for the waves of change. Because you can't do all of it. No one person can. No. It's why we need community. It's why we need to pull people together to move in a bigger vibration and in a bigger way.
In the days, I have a folder that I keep on my computer. And anytime anybody tells me like the story of like being at the quilt guild or meeting and it's being able to sit next to somebody they know, that's going to be safe. I keep it on the days where it really sucks. When somebody has said something really horrible or whatever, I go to that folder.
Nice.
And I look at those ripples, because that's what those ripples are. Yeah. Is that those people, everybody who goes to their quilt guild or goes to the thing wearing their t-shirt or their pin or, whatever, is that tiny ripple out there who's touching one other person or more than one person. And those are the things that I have to remember when it doesn't feel like it's going very well. And that's what keeps me going at this point. Will it keep me going forever? I don't know. I came back and said, I would give it 1 to 2 years.
Okay.
2 years but it had to be financially sustainable for it into that period. And if not, that I would be going and getting a job, doing something else. So far, so good.
So tell us where people can find you.
So on Instagram, you can find me at the BadAss Quilter, or look up Maddie Kertay. Both of them will get you to me on Instagram. There is a BadAss Quilter website. We're getting ready to do a whole reorg over there.
Okay.
But if people want BadAss Quilter, like to see the t-shirts and all the fun stuff that we do and the stickers like that, it's the BadAss Quilter shop at Big Cartel.
Okay.
And honestly, if you type in BadAss Quilter, it's the first hit on Google.
Nice.
So
nice.
it all comes
we'll
up
put
that
it all
way.
into the show notes too, so people will be able to click on it. Yeah. Thank you. It's just an interesting glimpse into what our quilt world can be, and some of the struggles.
That's the hope.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's important to change what our quilt world has been and move it towards what it can be. Yeah.
That is, I think, for the sustainability and the long-term health of the hobby, I think it's got to.
I do too.
Yep.
I do too.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much for chatting with me, Maddie. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
What I really liked about that conversation with Maddie is the hard conversation that she is trying to have out there, and the determination she has around remaining and boldly being a liberal quilter in a space where it's not always super welcome, and not that it shouldn't be welcome. So I'm really glad that she's having these conversations. I'm really glad that she's creating a safe space for makers to join her cause and take up the charge to find us a way towards sustainable quilting that is inclusive. These are really important stories. These are really important objectives that I think that we should have as quilters going forward, that we need to embrace and accept all of the people in our world and move forward with kindness and a way of including everybody we can include, be the people we want to be, and treat people the way we want to be treated. Anyway, I think it's amazing what she's doing, and I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation and this little piece of the narrative around the quilt world and what some people are doing out there to try and make difference in what we can be going forward. If you want to hear more about her, if you want to be able to listen to more of the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you again another time. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Threads of Sustainability. If you enjoy the stories behind sustainable textiles, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the podcast. Keep the conversation going over at the Green Stitchers Hive. And until next time, let's continue working towards a future that values both creativity and our planet. Happy stitching.